In the vast expanse of the galaxy, the Galactic Empire ruled with unquestioned dominance. Its ships streaked across the stars, and its fleets patrolled the outer rims. But even the most advanced technology could not foresee the anomaly that would soon spark its greatest challenge far beyond the outermost colonies in a star system that was long believed to be devoid of life. Something stirred. The scouts aboard the Empire's flagship noticed the faint signal first. It was barely a ripple in the fabric of space, but it persisted and grew more defined over the span of several days, a repetitive pulse that seemed almost deliberate. The Empire's advanced detection systems struggled to identify the source, at first dismissing it as cosmic background radiation. But as the signal's complexity increased, it became undeniable. There was intelligence behind it. The Empire had never encountered an alien species that could communicate with such frequency, let alone produce signals of this magnitude, and yet the origin was a planet marked as insignificant. Earth was a blue and green orb orbiting a small star with no apparent resources or strategic value. The signal, however, was impossible to ignore. After careful deliberation, the Empire's command authorized an expedition to investigate the anomaly. The task was given to Captain Vala, the most experienced scout in the fleet. She was known for her sharp mind and ability to navigate unknown territories. Her vessel, the Horizon, was one of the fastest ships in the fleet and equipped with the latest stealth technology. The mission was simple: find the source of the signal and report back with any findings. Captain Vala and her crew embarked on their journey with little more than curiosity as their guide. The journey through the stars was uneventful at first, but as they approached the Earth system, strange things began to happen. The sensors on the horizon began to malfunction. The ship's systems flickered and distorted, as though something was tampering with the very fabric of space-time itself. The closer they got, the more erratic the data became. The shift shields fluctuated in intensity and energy readings spiked without explanation. Vela ordered the crew to conduct a full diagnostic, but even as they worked to identify the source, the signal grew louder and more insistent. It was as if the planet itself was reaching out, pulling them and drawing them closer and closer with every passing moment. There was no way to trace it, no way to understand its origin. It was simply there. Upon entering the system, the crew saw Earth for the first time. It appeared serene from space, with its swirling clouds and vast oceans. The sight was almost peaceful, but something about it unsettled Vala. The planet seemed too still, too quiet for something so alive. She had studied thousands of worlds across the galaxy, and yet none of them had made her feel this way. Earth was different. The ship descended into the atmosphere with calculated precision. But as they neared the surface, a sudden shift occurred. The entire ship jerked, as though caught in an unseen force. Vala's fingers flew across the controls, but it was too late. Before she could regain control, the Horizon was caught in an electromagnetic field, the likes of which no one had ever seen. The captain's voice echoed across the ship as she barked orders to her crew, but their screens were already flickering with interference, and their sensors were overwhelmed. They were not prepared for this, not in the slightest. No one had warned them about a world where even their technology could be made to bend to unknown will. The planet Earth was far more than they could have ever imagined, and its secrets were just beginning to reveal themselves. As the Horizon struggled to regain control, Captain Vala could feel a growing tension in the air. The electromagnetic field was unlike anything they had encountered before. It wasn't just disrupting their technology. It was almost as if it was testing them, pushing them to their limits with every passing moment. The crew fought to stabilize their descent, but it was clear they were no longer in charge of their fate. The ship had become little more than a puppet in the hands of an unseen force. Finally, with a sudden jolt, the Horizon landed softly on the planet's surface. The impact was gentle, but the force of their arrival left the crew shaken. The atmosphere was thick with humidity, and the strange electromagnetic interference still lingered like a quiet hum in the background. Vala ordered her team to disembark cautiously. Their mission was clear: find the source of the signal and investigate. But as they stepped onto the foreign soil, they quickly realized that Earth was not as it seemed. The air was rich with unfamiliar scents. Strange plants and towering structures filled the landscape, But there was something else, something intangible that made Vala's senses tingle, the feeling that they were not alone, that they were being watched. She had landed on countless worlds before, but never had she felt this kind of presence, this palpable sense of something watching from the shadows. The crew moved through the alien terrain, their boots sinking into the soft earth. As they made their way to the nearest settlement, the city they discovered was a strange blend of ancient architecture and modern innovation. The buildings were unlike any Vala had seen. They were not constructed with the same precision and formality of the Empire's structures. Instead, they were haphazardly built, and yet somehow functional. There was no clear pattern to their design, but still they stood tall and proud, as though the city had been forged from necessity rather than ambition. Humans, the inhabitants of this strange world, emerged from the buildings to greet the newcomers. Their appearance was unremarkable by Empire standards. They were small in stature, with soft features and primitive clothing, yet there was an undeniable strength in their eyes, a quiet resilience that seemed to shine through despite the simple exterior. They were not intimidated by the alien presence, not even a little. Vala watched them closely as they approached. They spoke in a language that was entirely unfamiliar, but their expressions were clear enough. Their curiosity was palpable. They circled the Empire scouts like animals, observing with intense focus, as if they were the ones being studied, not the other way around. Vala attempted to communicate, but her attempts were met with blank stares. Her translator device struggled to make sense of their speech. It was as if the humans did not speak in the same way as any species the Empire had encountered. The humans did not seem fearful of the Empire's presence. In fact, they seemed almost indifferent, as if they had dealt with far stranger things in their time. Vala could sense a strange energy from them, something beyond mere survival instincts. They were intelligent, but in a way that was difficult to grasp. It was as if they were always one step ahead, always thinking beyond the immediate moment. She ordered her crew to observe and report back to the ship, but even as they made their way through the city, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just beneath the surface, something far more dangerous than they could comprehend. The humans were not just inhabitants of this world, they were something more. And as the day wore on, Vala began to suspect that this planet held secrets the Empire was not ready to uncover. As the Empire scouts spent more time on Earth, Captain Vala felt the weight of something she couldn't quite place. The humans were watching them, but not with fear or curiosity. They were watching them with understanding. It was as though they already knew everything about the visitors without having to ask. The deeper she looked into their eyes, the more she felt the sensation of being studied rather than studying. It was clear that the humans did not view themselves as weak or inferior in any way. Their world was unlike any the Empire had ever seen. It was not built on the same principles of order and structure that the Empire thrived on. Earth's cities were not grandiose or symmetrical. They were instead a chaotic blend of old and new, of makeshift solutions crafted from limited resources, and yet there was something remarkable about them. The humans had learned to thrive in conditions where other species might have perished. Their innovation was born not from wealth or power, but from necessity. The more Vala observed the humans, the more she began to realize the true nature of their strength. It was not in their weapons or technology. It was in their ability to adapt to their environment with a speed and efficiency that no species she had ever encountered could match. The humans did not wait for the universe to give them what they needed. They took what they had and made it work, whether it was scavenging from the ruins of old structures or inventing new tools from seemingly insignificant materials. The humans could turn anything into something useful and even dangerous. Vala's team tried to establish communication with the humans, but their attempts were met with little success. Their translation devices struggled to decode the language, and the humans themselves seemed more interested in observing than speaking. Even when they did interact, it was clear that they had no interest in the Empire's grandeur or promises of power. They spoke in riddles and stories rather than direct answers, but there was an underlying message beneath their words, a message that unsettled Vala deeply. It was a message about survival, a message about how the humans had learned to endure through the toughest of circumstances. With no help from outside forces, they had faced calamities and wars, and yet they were still standing. It was as though their entire civilization had been forged in the fires of struggle, and that struggle had given them an unshakable resilience, something that no amount of advanced technology or military might could ever break. In an attempt to understand their resilience, Vala led her crew to one of the human settlements known as a village. The buildings were small and crude compared to the Empire's cities, but there was a sense of community and ingenuity that made them stand out. It wasn't the technology that impressed Vala, it was how the humans worked together. They used every part of their environment to their advantage, creating shelters from materials that should have been considered useless. They had no need for elaborate machines or complicated systems. They just made do with what they had, and somehow it always worked. As they walked through the village, Vala couldn't help but notice that the humans were always moving, always adapting. No one stood idle, even in their simplest tasks. They showed a profound awareness of their surroundings. They didn't wait for resources to come to them. They sought them out. They were a people born not from comfort, but from the relentless drive to survive and thrive in a world that seemed designed to challenge them at every turn. By the time the Empire scouts returned to the horizon, Vala knew they were facing something far greater than they had ever anticipated. The humans were not just survivors, they were creators, builders, and adapters, and their ability to turn nothing into something would make them a force that no one could ignore. The next day, Captain Vala and her crew found themselves back at the edge of the human settlement. The previous evening's observations still echoed in Vala's mind. The quiet confidence of the humans, their ability to adapt and thrive under the harshest conditions, had left an impression far deeper than she had anticipated. As they moved through the village, once more the crew tried to piece together what made these beings so different from every other species they had encountered. Vala had seen civilizations fall under the weight of their own complacency, empires crumble under the sheer inertia of their own power, but Earth's inhabitants were not like any species she had ever encountered. They were not complacent or dependent on their technology. Instead, they seemed to build upon whatever was available to them. Every step was purposeful, and every mistake was an opportunity to learn. The humans had not conquered their world with weapons, or might they had done it with an unwavering will to grow. It was this observation that led Vala to make an unprecedented decision. She ordered her crew to remain on Earth for a longer period of time, to study these humans further. She knew that the Empire's interests on this planet went beyond simply identifying its technological potential. It was clear that this was a species with untapped power, a power that could rival or even surpass the Empire's own. Her team spent weeks interacting with the humans, studying their innovations and their ways of life. During their stay, the scouts encountered strange new technologies, simple machines that were far more complex than they first appeared, basic tools that had been modified to serve multiple purposes. The humans did not see these tools as finished products, they saw them as works in progress. They were constantly improving, always looking for ways to enhance what they already had. It was during one of these observations that Vala witnessed something that would forever alter her perception of Earth's inhabitants. She and her team were watching a group of humans build a structure from salvaged materials. They were using what appeared to be outdated technology, but they were doing so with a precision and efficiency that stunned the Empire scouts. The structure they were building was not just functional, it was something more. It was a testament to human ingenuity and adaptability. Vala watched as the humans worked together without hesitation, each one taking on a role that best suited their skills without need for direction. Their movements were fluid and instinctual, as if they had done this countless times before. The structure took shape quickly, and in a matter of hours it was complete, a sturdy building that seemed far more advanced than the materials from which it had been crafted. The humans had turned the ruins of their past into something new and functional, something that could serve them for years to come. Vala's thoughts raced as she realized the implications of what she was seeing. This was not a simple species, not by any stretch of the imagination. The humans were capable of creating technologies that could surpass the Empire's own. They had the potential to outpace any species in the galaxy if they were allowed to grow and adapt freely. The captain was struck by a sudden thought. What if the signal they had intercepted wasn't just a call for help? What if it was a challenge, a warning that the humans were already reaching beyond the boundaries of their world? What if they were calling out to anyone who would listen because they knew their potential was limitless? Vala turned to her crew and made the decision that would change the course of their mission. They were not here to conquer Earth. They were here to understand and prepare for what was coming next. The humans were not a species to be underestimated. They were an enigma that held the key to something greater than anyone could have anticipated. As days turned into weeks, Captain Vala and her crew observed the humans with growing fascination. Earth's inhabitants seemed to be endlessly inventive. Every time the Empire scouts thought they had seen the limits of human potential, they would discover something new, something that defied expectation. It wasn't just their technology that intrigued Vala, it was the way in which they approached every problem they encountered with determination and creativity. They had no reliance on the advanced machinery and sleek designs that dominated the galaxy. Instead, they made do with what they had, and yet what they made was always functional and often more sophisticated than it appeared. One afternoon, the crew was invited to observe the construction of a new machine by a group of humans who had been experimenting with energy generation. The device they were building seemed crude at first glance, but as Vala watched them assemble it piece by piece, she began to see the brilliance in their design. The human engineers worked with a combination of salvage technology and simple tools to create something that could generate power more efficiently than any machine she had ever seen, and yet it was built with a fraction of the materials required for similar devices in the Empire's fleets. The scouts could hardly contain their awe as they realized the implications of what they were witnessing. The humans were not just adapting, they were innovating at a pace that far outstripped anything they had ever encountered in the galaxy. This was not a species that needed to catch up to other civilizations. They were already on the cusp of creating something revolutionary. Vala's mind raced as she considered the long-term consequences if the Empire didn't take action. Soon this new world they had stumbled upon could become a rival unlike any they had faced before. It was one thing for a species to possess technological superiority, but it was another entirely to possess the capacity for continuous innovation. A species that could reinvent itself time and time again would eventually become unstoppable. And yet the humans remained completely unaware of their potential. They continued to work with an almost innocent disregard for the magnitude of their achievements. They didn't see their inventions as breakthroughs. They saw them as necessary tools to improve their daily lives. They didn't view their progress as a race against anyone but themselves, constantly striving to do better without realizing that they were already far beyond the point of surpassing the galaxy's established powers. Vala decided that it was time to speak with the human leaders in an attempt to understand their motivations and intentions. She had seen enough to know that their potential was limitless, but the question remained: how far would they push themselves, how quickly would they advance, and what would happen when the rest of the galaxy took notice? When Vala finally met with the human leaders, she was struck by how ordinary they seemed. They didn't possess the airs of aristocrats or military commanders. They didn't speak in grandiose terms or make demands. They simply presented their ideas and visions for the future with humility and conviction. They spoke of cooperation and mutual growth, of building a world where all could thrive. Vala listened to them intently, but in the back of her mind the same question kept returning: what if these humans were not content with their small world? What if they wanted more than what the Empire could offer? What if they looked beyond their own planet and sought to take their place among the stars? The more she considered the possibility, the more certain she became that the Empire's initial assessment of Earth had been tragically wrong. These humans were not a threat because they were dangerous. They were a threat because they were capable of becoming something far more formidable than anyone could have anticipated. They were creators, they were innovators, and they were unstoppable. And soon the Empire would realize that it had made the mistake of underestimating them far too late. As the days passed, Captain Vala's mind remained occupied by the relentless tide of human innovation. Every observation seemed to reveal more about their capabilities, and the deeper she dug, the more she realized that the humans were not just surviving on Earth. They were thriving in ways no one had ever expected. The more they adapted to their environment, The more they adapted to each other, their sense of unity was as remarkable as their ability to invent and create new solutions in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. Vala had witnessed human ingenuity firsthand, but now she was beginning to understand something far more significant. The true power of this species was not in their individual accomplishments, but in their collective drive, their ability to come together and solve problems that were far beyond the scope of any one person or civilization. They didn't rely on centralized power or rigid systems. Instead, they worked in a decentralized fashion, sharing knowledge and ideas freely with one another. This new understanding sent shockwaves through the Empire's fleet. The scouts were still watching from orbit, and they could feel the tension building. The humans had already begun to experiment with space travel. Their makeshift ships were crude but functional, and their knowledge of energy generation was advancing at an exponential rate. Even the Empire's most advanced technologies couldn't keep pace with their relentless evolution. Vala felt a deep unease settle within her as she recognized the implications of what the humans were doing. They weren't just experimenting with their environment anymore. They were preparing for something far grander. They were reaching out beyond their world, testing the boundaries of the universe itself. And if they succeeded, if they were allowed to continue their progress, there was no telling where their potential could lead them. One evening, after another long day of observation, Vala stood on the horizon's bridge, gazing out at the distant planet. She had never been one to fear the unknown, but now she felt a creeping sense of dread as she considered the fate of the Empire. Her orders were clear: gather information and report back. But what if their reports weren't enough? What if the threat wasn't simply the humans themselves, but what they represented, a species capable of challenging the very foundations of the Empire's existence? The Empire had long prided itself on its ability to suppress potential threats before they ever had a chance to rise, and yet here it was staring them in the face, a species that was already surpassing their own technologies, without even trying, a species that could destroy entire fleets with nothing but their wits and their will to survive. As the days wore on, the tension continued to mount. The Empire's fleet watched Earth with growing unease, and in secret the leaders of the Empire began to deliberate their options. The first instinct was to strike preemptively, to crush the human threat before it could grow any stronger. But there was another voice, one that urged caution. The humans were not like the other species the Empire had encountered. They were unpredictable, and their methods were alien to anything the Empire had ever known. Vala was caught between these two opposing forces: the need to protect the Empire, and the growing realization that she had underestimated the humans from the start. They were not like any other species they had encountered. They did not want to conquer or destroy. They wanted to create and adapt and survive. And if the Empire did not act soon, they would soon find themselves facing an opponent that could not be defeated by force alone. In the final moments before the Empire made its decision, Vala stood again, looking out into the dark expanse of space. The universe seemed vast and empty, but now she understood it better than ever before. There was something in this galaxy far more dangerous than any weapon. It was the will to survive, and the humans had it in abundance. And soon the Empire would have no choice but to face the consequences of their neglect. The day came when the Empire could no longer ignore the inevitable. The scouts aboard the horizon watched helplessly as Earth's progress accelerated at a rate that threatened to outpace their own. The humans had begun to develop technologies that could destabilize entire sectors of the galaxy. They had no idea how to stop them. The Empire had relied on overwhelming force to crush uprisings and threats before. But Earth was different. These humans did not act with force, they acted with cunning and creativity, and that was a power the Empire's leaders could not comprehend. The first signs of the shift were subtle. The humans began to send signals into space, simple messages that echoed across the void, a kind of invitation, but also a challenge. They had sent out probes to other systems and were beginning to establish rudimentary communication with alien species. Those who received the messages were perplexed by the sudden interest from a previously unknown species, but none could deny the curiosity and innovation that lay behind the humans. Every move, it was clear the humans were no longer content with their little corner of the galaxy. They were reaching for something greater. In the Empire's command centers across the galaxy, the leaders convened in secret meetings discussing their options. Some suggested an all-out assault on Earth to eradicate the potential threat before it could grow. Others were more cautious, urging for further observation and study, but the underlying tension was undeniable. No one wanted to be the one responsible for underestimating the humans, and everyone feared the consequences of inaction. Captain Vala stood at the center of it all as the Empire's leaders debated. Her thoughts were conflicted. She had watched the humans rise from obscurity to become a force capable of challenging the very foundations of the galaxy's power structures. But she also knew what would happen if the Empire did not act. Earth would soon possess the ability to not only defend itself, but to conquer other worlds and become a dominant force in the galaxy. Vala had once believed in the Empire's superiority, but now she questioned everything she had been taught. The Empire had always used its military might and technological superiority to keep the galaxy under control, but the humans were a living testament to the fact that raw power was not the only measure of strength. Their ability to adapt and innovate was something that the Empire had never accounted for. The humans began to test the Empire's defenses by sending small probes into controlled space. These probes were unarmed, but their mere existence was enough to rattle the Empire's military commanders, who could not fathom how a species so young had developed the ability to breach their borders without detection. It was a clear sign that the humans were no longer a simple species to be ignored. They had entered the galactic stage, whether the Empire was ready or not. Vala knew that time was running out. She was torn between her loyalty to the Empire and her growing understanding of the humans. Their ability to create and adapt was something that could not be contained by force alone. The Empire had built its empire on the idea that strength alone could keep the galaxy in line, but it was becoming painfully clear that the humans would not bend to their will. They would not be subdued by mere might. As the days passed, the Empire's fleet began to prepare for the inevitable, a confrontation that could not be avoided. The humans were now a direct threat to the Empire's dominance, and something had to be done to either stop them or ensure they were brought to heel. Vala couldn't help but wonder if the humans had already won without ever firing a shot, if their mere existence had proven that the true power in the galaxy lay not in weapons or fleets, but in the unyielding will to survive and adapt. The Empire was faced with a choice that would shape the future of the galaxy. Either they could crush the humans now before they became too powerful, or they could learn to coexist with a species that was unlike anything they had ever known. And yet, as Vala stood on the bridge of the horizon, she couldn't shake the feeling that the true choice had already been made. The humans were not the ones who needed to change. They had already found a way to thrive in the universe. It was the Empire that was now at risk of losing its place in it. The decision had been made. The Empire would not wait any longer. The High Command had spoken, and the orders were clear. Earth was to be neutralized before it became an unstoppable force. The fleets had been mobilized in secret, and the weapons were primed. But Vala stood at the helm of the horizon, knowing that this was not a fight she could win, not in the way the Empire expected her to. The humans were different. They were not like the others they had faced before. They were something more, something that had evolved beyond the need for destruction and conquest. The fleet moved into position above Earth, preparing to strike. But as the command ships aligned their forces, Vala could feel a sinking sensation in her chest. She knew what would come next. She had seen the way the humans operated. They didn't need grand armies or advanced weapons to fight. They had something else, something far more dangerous than any weapon of mass destruction. They had an inherent resilience that no one could break, and the will to defend their home at any cost. Vala watched as Earth's inhabitants began to prepare in their own way. She had seen their ingenuity and their determination firsthand, but now she was witnessing it on a scale that transcended mere survival. They were organizing without the need for a central authority. Every individual had a part to play, every community had a role, and the planet itself seemed to respond to their actions. The electromagnetic fields, the disturbances in spacetime, were becoming stronger, not from an outside source, but from the Earth itself, as if the very planet was aligning with its inhabitants. The Empire's fleet hesitated for a moment, And that moment was enough. The humans were not passive. They had already begun to fight back in their own way. Their ships were primitive yet effective. Their weapons were not advanced in the traditional sense, but their technology was rapidly evolving, and their will to protect their home was unwavering. Vala knew the Empire's ships were powerful, but she also understood that there was more to victory than superior technology and firepower. The humans had something the Empire had long since forgotten: the will to survive against all odds, the relentless drive to innovate and adapt that had carried them from a primitive world to one capable of taking on even the mightiest of empires. The first shot was fired not from the Empire's fleet, but from one of the human ships. It wasn't a missile or laser beam. It was a simple pulse of energy sent out into the vastness of space, a signal that rattled the Empire's systems and sent shockwaves through the fleet. The humans had hacked into the Empire's technology and were using it against them. They had learned how to counteract the Empire's most advanced weaponry and use it to their advantage. The battle that followed was not what the Empire had expected. It was a clash of ideologies, not just ships and soldiers. The Empire's fleet fired upon Earth's defenses, but with each strike the humans adapted and countered in ways that defied understanding. The planet itself seemed to fight back, as if the very Earth was defending its children from a foreign invader. Vala stood at the command center watching the chaos unfold, and in that moment she knew the truth. The Empire had already lost. This was not a war to be fought with weapons. This was a war of wills, and the humans were simply too strong. Their resilience, too unyielding. The Empire's strategy had been flawed from the start, and now they were reaping the consequences of underestimating a species that had learned how to survive in ways no one else had ever imagined. As the battle raged on the horizon, remained in orbit, and Vala watched as the humans began to send their own ships into space, not to conquer but to explore and to expand their knowledge. Their influence began to spread beyond their world, and as the Empire's forces faltered, she realized that Earth had not just survived the Empire's assault. It had evolved into something far more dangerous. It had become a new force in the galaxy, one that could not be stopped. In that moment, Vala made a choice. She could no longer serve the Empire, not when she had seen the strength of humanity's will. She knew that the galaxy had entered a new era, and it would be defined not by the power of empires, but by the creativity and adaptability of those who had the courage to reach beyond their limitations and shape their own destiny. Earth had won the battle, but more importantly, it had won the future, and with that victory came a new horizon for all of humanity.